Dumbo, Chongden, Jebo, Jojumbo, Yangdongbo, Zobe, Rebo, Don, Xiaosu, Denbo, Dewo, Xibo, Juden, Jebo, Dere, Kolo, Jebo, Lano, Ladon, Nanje, Dumbo, Sanje, Jode, Bejo, Jojo, Tubo, Lo, Zhangzhen, Jodo, Josu, Jebo, Kanze, Kanyi, Zuo, Jedong, Sa Jian, Deno, Gongbo, Debo, Ngani, Jiden, Deno, Chu, Jesong, Deze, Gebo, Jolo, Zhangzhen, Nanda, Gong, Chu, Do, Su, Song, Yi, Xie, Jiang, Zu, Si, Jie, 一些叫做世界人物的当波之内生了，广播突击接电波，当机接电波，是那一点叫做些的些些老相声，道别的桥着我就月月送的路。基督的东求着我，西就就那相声。这年这月那样的路波多那手，心给当波一点点，给的那样相似。六波这样的交情，给我别送走吧。让给三年用说的，天天送接电波。干嘛这里嘛面，就嘛是我就不。面浪落到这道不，留下就能得到。是那的月堂前是波音，不光都能解决着的。高档那档节约老主意，随便做人着玩着玩哟。
Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, the great gathering of monks and the great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said, Noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered Venerable Sharadvati Putra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Venerable Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Dozo gyala buji dozi yala zhuji yade song. Dozo jeru nyumu nyum je jaru dozi jing. Mare meze donge nyumu jini junze jeru. Dene doji soji dozi yade lezo jase. Doyengu, Jedon, Jedon, Jini, Jere, Dalimin, Jambe, Yana, Arabaza, 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 Zeden, Juja, Chero, Yuzen, Bale de moi mi ba ro se ne ka da de je jong lo do ba ye lo do bo be no lo do lo ya zo je do ye jo je ye me ya lo jo ye ro 多劫前波的些多劫中，出自跌落波多那罗。边中中的波动阿的想，鸟类心罗吉罗所望的，上波多面一年当着的，秋天的月的当着边的，西藏过桑这年所连波，了解识别吉罗所望的。鸟人有面相见的状动，大王肉包这边可交见，上界观众宝宝要在所，上门大业就让所望的，协助当边中央阿殿上，高当天边面光中等见。念就能学过去所拉所，高当那么能拉所我的，刚见心的世界中个梦，我都这边我说接着见，当俺天边到我给着见，要是就把家拉所我的。教宗公的那么多节长，看了光的些年最终呢，就当推磨我中走在边，这些那么那了所望的，让将送着跟了大爷们。给上他把这边中安处，在远这边他看在发言，实在些年能了所望的，叫我更多养到那么多，这面去这边了我决定，撒当那这有的老做的，多觉常给我。我念多说三界就，昨天传那想就不，多年就尊前，老给姐姐这边从南京，到了平时上，若不说三界就能昨天传那想就不多，多年就尊前。他给姐姐这边做那的，到了平时上，若不说三界就能自己就能，想就不多当年就做的，他给姐姐这边做那的，到了平时上的，若不说，哎呀。他也不够多，
够多，是够多。
哎，也大家弄口当起来接的上是，哎，当然是对了啊，可是想他，呀，当然去当小，哦，哎呀，当然这里，若了平时上节如果学生，若申请了偏偏觉得上节就刚刚他把他刚写的，他我呢，说说那个也对话的，点对对进院听到了，你说说能给也不去，你给也不这样，即三把说给的给让你也来呢，你三把说就当呢，你就不足够去接来多啊，确切是的听到对来多啊。
So as we find in the refuge prayers or the refuge formula, where it says, "I take refuge in Chujila until I'm enlightened, and by the practice of generosity suffered may I gain state of enlightenment for the benefit of other beings." So here now, we're not very sure whether we will be able to benefit other beings. However, when it comes to achievement of one's own happiness, the temporary and ultimate happiness. We have a responsibility to really to do something which makes this happiness happens in us. This is our responsibility. And this can be, this responsibility can only be fulfilled if one is able to transform one's mind. So transforming of one's mind is all about practicing what we call dharma.
Rangi sene yonsu de tene sanje temba yense de mune ta nyanga tusa tere doa jen zangye kante chi tuwa yena yang jinse sana tombe to ne rani ji shide zhu mo genge ji yi ta me chi so bu doa.
So it is therefore we also find this at the end of praise to Buddha Shakyamuni, where it stated that the thoroughly subjugation of one's own mind is the doctrines of the Buddha. So now here, when it comes to, subduing one's mind, what is skillful means or method which requires for one to, subdue one's mind?
Ta tendrige ene sendi wala sendi to shego ni shebala tombo ene togoro ni tombo togo yenza ne ji nga soge ji hada yenza da chobe so de ji mayin ba toba de yang ni ji kami ya dan de ji jene ni zambi ji da zambu juice so ma na yin de ji yenza ene danda bala ma soge debi no lo la tendrige nyane jene ni den de ji se la ta yere sana ni domba tobe ombo ne ya so da rang ge ji sa yin la me ba je ni tendrige nyane na ne ni 내가 다 타투기 땐데 대화니 비니 집었단 선주 매저버지 열에 세대니 랑이 카미야다 쳤잖아. 네 랑이 되냐 나거든. 이봐체.
So now here when it comes to subduing one's mind, first one must understand what is meant by mind and what is meant by consciousness of mind that we are talking about here. And once we are able to identify one's own mind, one is then begin to listen to the teachings or the instructions where it actually instructs us, give us a precise instructions of subduing one's mind. So now this can be done by following the perfect examples of the great masters of the past, such as Buddha Shakyamuni and all other masters, the great noble beings who actually went through those process of venturing on the spiritual path and applying a remedy towards one's mind to bring about transformations. So it is therefore, we also as a beginner, the practitioner, must also, turn ourselves towards the following the examples of the great beings of the past.
Ju mishi bi gala donghe mende jin de donghe jela ni gai che ta se na yi den je yin nga shu shin ju ne yi ni rang dan de ba chi so yi sen jen de da ni che ma ro sa be ni ni je yi mi de chi chen na nga so cha ma ni de shu ga ma che na nam ba na xin chi chung ne che ma ro de je jing ra ra gi che tu ro cha na se yi ni ji ga na de zhuan na de ji dang jia so de juan de so de jing be dian da lai ni me ba ga ma ni su che yin da.
So now, let's take a time to, think about all other sentient beings just like ourselves, who don't want to achieve happiness, yet at the same time, they're unable to engage in the actions which becomes a cause for happiness. But rather, their actions of the body, speech, and mind always lead to the accumulation of the cause of suffering. So it is therefore, it is worthwhile for all of us to reflect our mind upon the suffering of all other sentient beings and develop an uncontrived compassion towards all other beings. And then try to develop a genuine faith and aspiration to the object of refuge by thinking that may all the sufferings of all sentient beings, may all sufferings of all sentient beings may pacify it. May you please grant us achievement of happiness of oneself and that of all other sentient beings. With this thought, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate.
다 들리게 아니 때때 대화주는 간주 두고를 주에게 터여를 여 말이었어. 아니 동해면 되는 동해기 저때 빵에게 터여를 여 말이. 아니 여나 간주에는 제발에 아니 단답발에 빵에 수정발에 아니 마음반에 선조거래 소소로는 해결을 해그 말해서 진지된 게서 좋아하는 게 지에 좋아 제가 견자지 맞춰야 돼요.
So now here, the question is, how do we really achieve happiness, what we call the everlasting happiness? Is there a means for achievement of our happiness? If this is so, who have actually achieved such happiness in the past? Is there a way that we can actually eliminate our sufferings? So if you really put in effort, are we really be able to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings?
Yeah, 되게 되게 충분해서. 만에 다더니는 다 인산에 드리지 터여를 가서 터여를 터여바데 아니 터연 누스네 냐뉴 토는 송샹이게 아니 넘버 2번 홍보네 아니 다른 게 전체 사이나마 비슷하나래 가서 무슨 친해져서게 정글하면 종합을 준비 받지 냐토는 송샹이게 아니 배셔 단달랑 가서 지에 나이 소지로와 소소 난가 되는 로고에나 ini langa de show so shege pese de mos ta na so je ya yin zan ne ran temba tu be homo ne ran ge je zai na me ba ji ni ju ba dang ba na jin je ba de la ni je ba bi chwa so ye de ro.
So there is a way that we can actually achieve happiness as the lasting happiness or the ultimate state of happiness that has been achieved by the great beings in the past. It is therefore, it is through their experience they have elucidated the path to complete happiness, beginning right from the beginning from the Buddha all the way to one's own root gurus, including Lama Tsongkhapa and so forth. So it is through their own experience they have written the immaculate text, which has an immaculate source, and advising us, if you really want to achieve a state of happiness, this is the path that you should venture upon, that we should venture on. And so therefore, whatever the teaching they have given, whatever the text they have written, it is all based on their own experience. So with this, by appreciating their experience and that the way they wrote the teachings, which enables us to venture onto this spiritual path, with these appreciations, one is actually, it actually includes appreciation of the first outlines of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the greatness of the teachings given in order to show that the teachings has a noble source.
마소 제바비 쳐다 당하게 쳐니베데 쳐다 미세자다 말아죠 라미 쳐다 송기 쳐다와 송기 쳐다 당하게 쳐래 되니라 아니 당하게 쳐도네 라미 예대 통하다 라미 예대 통하네 당하게 쳐 통하세 되니 나 마소 장자라 딱 지지연데 되셔와 나서 체미 라마 체미 주베 주요데 송 체미 주베 송 체마라 되네 라마 체마도에 야 라마 체마도네 송 체마도에 추지 쳐당 제법이 쳐니보데 아니 지지 되셔
So the first two outlines are actually it is kind of interconnected. It is to are interconnected because sometime by means of of showing the greatness of the authors, it actually shows the greatness of its teachings, his or her teachings. The first one is showing the greatness of the teachings directly, and then indirectly, it actually shows or appreciating the greatness of its teachings. And we also find that sometimes when we talk about the valid being and valid teachings are also, interconnected, because sometimes by means of, establishing the valid beings directly, then indirectly it actually establishes the valid teachings of the valid beings, and vice versa.
쳐니다 되게 쳐라니 시제다 시제세데 자기 가르치기 때문에 쳐를 진행적인 임베스도 좋아거나 아니 소설연저도 적으로.
So now with these two greatness, how do we really listen to the teachings? By understanding these two greatness.
다 된적이 쳐니다 되게 쳐니 시제다 샤오. 아니 된적이 송기 쳐 뭐지 때라니 저기 동보 가르잖아. 아니 담봉은 저 마치데 있으면 담보 근데 랑지 자와데 개개 쳇다 집에 때 근데 개개 쳇다 집에 때네 개개게 저도 손바나게 냥산에 고고래 세데 저희 사제 타마데 된도 되래 맞아 다 개척하도 시에잖아.
So then this will then be followed by the next other outlines, the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. And then how do we really, in what manner that one needs to rely upon the spiritual teachers? Having relied upon the authentic spiritual teachers, how do we train ourselves by relying upon this such spiritual teacher?
되지. 당연 사실이 생긴다. 나 먼저 저와신이 때문에 되는 로지 다시 좀 받는 니지. 자이 사실 이시발라. 근데 이제 동본지자다. 되는 로지 다시 좀 받라니 대대는 힘벌는 비시 교와도 힘벌 제단에 주니지. 다 동본지자. 단 힘벌 제단에 주되라요. 니 랑지 나자라 힘벌 제단 힘벌는 뭐지. 다 동본지자. 단 힘벌는 정도라 송 지구 중요다 대모양 랑지를 뭐냐서는 지주분 된다 대모양 rinpa 주변 챔피언 랑지 rinpa nyangsa 지혜지 다 본본인 데서 다 주변 챔피언 랑지 rinpa nyangsa 지들라 자유 사지 송지 대전은 주변 고 생제 코나된 뭐 생제 제도 집에 생제는 셔발로 지혜지 다 본본인 데서 다 생제는 셔발로 지들라 송지 생제는 로발로 로그베 전세 로발로 로베 상제 민주바 템바 로발로 로베 rinpa 니셰바지 송지 다 동문이데 다 로발로베 좀 많이 시바달라니 대바 좀 버절라라 제단 쳐봐도 도제 대발라 지지 네 다 동보라 나 지지 동보라 송 상선제 로발라 한데 장내 제세제 담바종 존내 제단인데 주 제다로비 주지 다스 동문인데 다 송바달라 제다로비 제달라니 강라로비제 델로바는데 제 델로로비 좀 바지 다 동본인데서 델로로비 좀 발라야 사지 송제 사지 니제 쇼바줄라라데 치바도 파시 타만이는 어제지 다 동보라 니 랑게 상제 주면 바시고 바로 대신 받아 연지 주면 바시고 대용 공부절은 어제지 다 동보라 주 신발라로 주전라로 조발로지 전주라로 상대라로 싫어로 어제지 다 ben저게 아니 제세제 담바존에 유동이 쇼발라 하지 아니 바로 대신 받아 대용 공부 이제 니여게 나에 바로 대신 받주 대연하게 파시 동본인데 차차된 단도 송바 네 저비 파시나 로츠에 유동이 저비 파시나 로츠에 내가 저 코스보가 될래데레스.
So we are on the particular chapter of how to practice patience. This is the third practice out of 6 perfections. In other words, the practice of bodhisattvas.
되지. 다 등록이 저비 파시나 로츠에 저 받들라 나 예배는 가서 아니 송바 근데 저비라도 야와 생긴데 저바에 아니 야와도 시나 아니 가서 네 가서가 넘버는 좀만이 비서바치 아니 동해 당는 저바치 아니 출랑에 생저 저바치 다마솔 뇌제 진용하이나 뇌제 때라 카테 간데 자고리 코 남에 간데 땅그래 세디 카투데도.
So now we are under this particular chapter of how to train in the perfection of patience. The explanation of how to train the perfection of the patient has 5 parts, as we have already gone through that. What is patience? How to begin the cultivation of patience. Out of these 5 divisions, we are on the 3rd division, which is the division of patience. When it comes to the divisions of the patience, there are 3. This is regarding harm done to oneself or done to you, and accepting the suffering, arising in your mind stem, and being certain about the teachings and firmly maintaining belief in them.
되지. 당가서로 피기게 추기 네바지 시원나 네바싱에 지어로 네바싱에 라차 지어래 네바시가 상이 삼바지어로 크송나 돈에 소소는 간데 제고 세지 아니 유다 이제 你dance那老多啊，看的假设去，我做你就记得确认别个了，开送刚有多少钱？这个了，开送了看的效果，他讲的。
So when it comes to practicing patience, now here we actually engage in the practice of patience by encountering some difficulties. This actually opens the door for practicing one's patience. For instance, we should not. Where should we actually? Is it really justifiable by saying that if we really retaliate someone who inflict harm upon oneself, and if we think of retaliating, should we retaliate to the person, which is the agent, or the direct harmer, which is whatever the things that may have used by that person, impelled by that person, and to whom we should get angry or we should retaliate.
当我说哪里要不多呢？选举经验就是说呢，变得说了没几个，变得刘家写的青年把就老说呢，你说了青年把的老的，说了没掉啊几已经在的写的嘛都，爬了波银行去了上南京的嘛当完去，看的家头么多啊，那爬了波银行去的了接选举间呢，你看的看的间呢，可给俺了青年的老个月的是因为，你说搞不赢吧，就在上南京就当些的见的多，对么就话这爬小波的人的硬去，人家当。觉得见看着了点了，可能了，特别就创那个都是新旧的接通的钱呐，你看的家头多，但明白这说搞不赢吧的，马年看有接说的，说人生也要刚刚说过的当下的，必须得了，恰恰就上我们多。
So now here, normally what happens with us is, for instance, when someone use harsh words towards oneself, and we immediately, the way we react towards this individual is immediately, oh, such and such person is using such a harsh words towards me without any reason. And this is the immediate reaction that we have. And this is a kind of motivation that we have. We never think of what is really going on with that other person. We neglect even to take a second of thinking about the other person who is really what is going through this person. And we never thought of that. And, we never analyze the causes and conditions of why that such causes and condition of the person is actually indulging in such a harsh words.
他开始我做点了嘞吧，他都把了人那把生意钱呢，可是那把生意也没得个，可能那把他现在那把生意我接着的，然后老婆接着多么多，等这些钱就钱呢，你他如那把生意过了，几次上那多呢，他的家头他先当时开始得了子算，老婆的很新鲜的。
We always need to think about, whether the person is, harming us directly or indirectly. Is it right to really to think about the person's action and then retaliate? According to the teachings, it is unjustified. It is not right to retaliate or react towards the person directly or indirectly accordingly, which is what it says it's unjustified.
对，当然是上次能够问到，可是电影赛别去，我的就把看见那把了大的没里把呢，所以的，别去对看到电影上是。
当然是我的。
对，对那个对什么路问的，但我的就把看见那把了大呢没里把呢，说的啊，那我俺俩东北地区是吧？但我说了没几个边呢，春夏季度为那里就把这个就10个月呢， most never sing it a talk Mane Jude never sing it a talk Any can drink it, Taji, Mother Juba Ingala and Torigo Maria, so Canada.
So now here, let's go back to the previous paragraph that we already covered, but which is repeating this again. And it says like, on the analysis of whether the harm is direct or indirect, anger is unjustified. Anger is unjustified. In this particular paragraph, what it actually talks about is it actually talks about when someone, uses or the impulse sticks or whatever the object that person may have used to harm, inflict harm upon us. And now the question is, it is right to get angry towards the person or whatever the object that has been used by the person or the impulse by the person?
To a Pechan Sibo to American Most never GB, New Zealand, Tonane, Yupa La Soba, Yupa La Soba, Kansajan the Togola, Junior never should be New Zealand, Tonane, Yupa So, Jibi, Baby, Jendo, Jubilant, never Shebala, Shedangi Baby, Shedala Togo there. Yupa La So, no good there. I good as a tip of the knowledge that you were the Cicerendo.
So then it says here, if you are angry at the agent of harm that directly inflicts the harm, you will have to be angry at the stick, etc. Just as you are at the person. If you are angry at the harmdoer who directly inflicts harm, then just as the person impels the stick and so on, and so forth, to do the harm, so hostility impels the persons. Therefore, get angry at the hostility.
That is Segundo, when the Michi Lapan, Jubak and Jubachi Shiyuana, and most Negila Togo and most Metala Togo Mado Jubal Togomaroa. Most Negila Togoana, any Melatoa gender, any Ubashingi Metala Toa and the Ubala Togo, yes, most Togoana.
So if we were to get angry directly towards which actually harm us, the direct harmer is the stick that has been used by the person. So should we get angry towards the stick, because the stick is the one actually inflicting harm upon us.
June Togoana, and then also Metala Toba Nangi, and Metigi Shadan Togo.
So if we were to say that one should get angry towards someone who actually uses this stick, such as the cost of using the stick, which talks about getting angry, it is right to get angry towards the person. If this is the case, then why don't we it is also a right to get angry towards hostility, because the hostility is the one that uses the person to use the stick to inflict harm upon oneself.
Sibo Sejaro, Medu Jubani, the Kumachengete, the Contrasane Senare, Shedangi, Onge, and the Mete Jean Mebacha, Metigi Lapan, the Kanyaba, the Shiyuete, most because Jugi Sheba Tewate, Shadandero, Contrat.
It is hostility, it is a hostility or the anger, which actually uses both person and the stick. So the anger or the hostility is the ultimate cause of the harmdoer, which is the person, and the whatever object that has been used by the person to harm you.
This is when I tend to sound like you don't so not so you sing it and you don't below an idea. Mitch, you never share the social couple, the social German, but the Sanaton Mado, Parapotel, Chin Tomaro, Kessitawan in a Parapotel, Jim Bashim and the Santon Maro, ko yongsa da ko kyunglo ka je se de juni shinju che me wa nga so tanda pali je ma jengo ma.
So, as I mentioned earlier, that whenever someone tries to harm upon us, whether bodily or verbally or mentally, we always think that we are on the right. We have, there's no right for the individual to harm us. And we always think that I am right. Based on this understanding of I and thinking about the righteousness of oneself, it's always, blocking us to analyze further, to understand the reality. We never thought of, we never think that we have a fault. We always think that we are faultless, and the person who is harming us is on fault. This is our basic way of thinking when someone really tries to harm upon us. We never, up until now, we never analyze ourselves. Why this person is really harming us.
야, 되게 네, 지 나바 탕치도 되게 주연의 님이 따서데 장기 유죄네 차당에 나래 신기 주제 차당 된지질의 님이 따통에 지내서나 봐 장심에 봐 니지 유연치지도 로 고신주 규마되나 고 장음에 번 로딩에 지게 장신이가 통등에 지 차소나 고 문대신의 니지제 장신이 니지래 유연치래도.
So now here, we should always try to look and understand one's own fault. The fault that lies within us at all time. It is innately existing. It innately existed within our mind or within our heart, which is our own mental affections. And if we were able to analyze in such a way that whenever someone is trying to harm us, instead of getting angry or employing hostility, one will be able to generate compassion and love towards the person who is inflicting harm upon oneself.
내가 저기 단다기 잠벨인데 나로라 지 선발의 조용히 나래 강의 수용이나 또 메토라스기 피 강의 영에 되게 신제달라 맞아 너무 거에 대 차단 저게 개미도 자신지 선발 나로라 됐지 전황지 해도.
So if you were able to think in that way, whoever tries to harm us, instead of getting angry, we will become more sympathetic.
되지. 당연히 로그인다. 유발라서 뭐 그때 게대 편발라토나 대양 시당 게베베 년나 시당 라지 시당 라토지 시소스 대나 유발라 메트로나 편발라 메트로 리라지 펜켄라 토나 시당 토지발 리발라 대다 민제바네 로메리빌 랑도 송인베 리바 넘바 탕제데 총발라 년바 장라 유바다 강사랑 미초와 샤유 쇼스 이장데 데랑 유바다 편바 소라 뇌선 유미지 미셰바네 하템비 장왕고비 리베셰바 샤오 손
engaging in the bodhisattva's deed says the stick and so forth directly cause the harm. But if I'm angry at the one who throws it, and since hostility impels them, it is better to get angry at hostility. If you're not angry at the stick, it is also wrong to be angry at the one who throws it. If you're angry with the one who throws it, it is correct to be angry also at the hostility. Not believing this, your mind has gone down a wrong path. Therefore, become certain about the overall sameness of the logic here and direct your mind towards not being angry at the person in the same way that you are not angry at the stick. Furthermore, use the reasoning. Reasonings taught earlier that negates the idea that anything has self-control. In order to understand that, you should not differentiate the stick and the one who throws the stick by whether they have harmful intent.
Da juba da juba shiba bu mini bode ni long long na chana ni ga le chiba long go long ma ni ga le chiba long lo je ma re so dan di de ro.
So then what it says is, if we get angry towards the person, then we should also get angry towards the stick. If this is the case, then we'll also get angry towards the hostility, because the hostility is the one that actually impels both the person and as well as the stick.
So
then we may argue by saying that it is not right, because the person has the conscious, but the stick has no conscious, right? Person has consciousness, but stick has no consciousness.
Met juba ji be de ba me de sal yu she de du ji ge me ji de ni ji be ji jang de me ji ge long long de juba de len long long jing de control de me de juba ni ge yan da gyu ma dong ye de me wa yin na tin ji be ji jang de san ba ye me ji be che ba ye ma.
That doesn't really matter whether it has a consciousness or not, whether it has a mind or not, in other words, whether it is conscious or not. You know, as long as the stick remains on the ground, the stick will never harm us. Stick has no power to harm us unless it is being used by someone or some individual. It is the individual who uses that stick and inflicting harm upon us. And the person, him or herself, is also impelled by the hostilities.
Juba rawa me ba me ji ge la pa ne le ba re me de rawa me ba shedan ge la pa ne le ba re.
So it is very similar, you know, because the stick has no control over it. Stick has no control because it's been used uncontrollably by the person, and person is uncontrollably used by hostility or the negative thoughts and emotions.
Me de rawa me ba shedan la ba kan le sa na kang yu ba de chong se de re me de rawa ye nge chen na so dong le ko ma re so me de nge da le do go nge de yen ji gu ma don na dang re ma do so ga shen de zhuo shen de rawa yue shen de so la ne ba xia se ji de zhou ma ro wa me de rawa me bi da re so.
So it is a very clear sign that individual as an ordinary individual has no power or no control over oneself. That is very certain, because if he or she has a power or control over him or herself, then he or she will not venture onto the path that leads oneself to this path, to the unending suffering. It is due to the uncontrollability of the individual, forced by their negative thoughts and emotions, he or she is then venturing on the path which leads towards suffering.
Not be wrong go be bishop but shall was see tamade, Janda Tere, met the wrong me by 젠와진데 손에 소소를 내버시고요나 아니 수이 온도 손샷에 따지지거든 아니 조바데 집에 제자 자고 조바데 뭐이 제가 배조 동아래 매대 샤당 배조 동아.
So therefore it says now, furthermore, use the reasoning taught earlier that negates the idea that anything has self-control in order to understand that you should not differentiate the stick and one who throws the stick by whether they have an intent. They have a harmful intent, sorry.
디시트에 양어지 가서지 저로질 뜨는 제목관에 특히 산나동 개체 말에 소소 단어만도 강년에 유즈비 년에 라질을 용하나 신체의 내치신 로아 댐빙 원시신의 이체님의 다도 강소하나 이 신체의 원시 이 녀모도스 장화집의 원시의 시어의 신체나 라메바 샹비 자와의 레토에 제체들 산나동의 마도 퍼쇼질의 지 소년 제목이 도수별 거라 인처럼 공도 저바체거리 지고 산나마도 와제 단단히 즈비 파싱이 냐네로 질레발라 뉴스 미바체네 니 샹바다 저 컴퓨터에 들어와.
So now it is when it comes to the practicing patience. So practicing patience really requires the understanding of lack of self-control in other beings. They have no self-control. Why? Because they are all remaining under the domination of their own negative thoughts and emotions. If you're able to understand this, will really take yourself into the genuine practice of patience. So practicing patience really requires understanding of the situation of others, both mentally and physically.
든지기 즈비 과차세나리 샴비 과차대 요아이나 아니 저 마수 대선 잠블리게 계시셔서마다 든지 차차 가세면 가세요서나 거투고 말이 아니 나제다 차도든 제생 간지지여서나 아니 샴비 과차대 즈비 과차게 라 수카대 자투고 말이 각디나 쉬이 남발에 되로.
So if one is able to equip oneself with the armor of patience or the armor of love or of loving kindness, and none of those weapons of anger and hostility can harm us. It will never be able to bring a harm upon us, so long as we are equipped with such such armors. Regardless, with none of those hostilities of negative thoughts and emotions, such as pride, jealousy, sense of competitiveness, will bring a harm upon us.
그래서 강제 못쳐다 강제 라레다 강제네 아니 과차도 거는마도 제 용샤에 게면도 녀바도 강제에 되는 최제세다 강제네 고마사에 들어.
So this can only be done. This practice of patience and understanding the lack of self-control of other beings can only be perfected. Understanding of this can be perfected within us is only by meditating. So meditation is something that always perfects our practices. So in fact, when speaking about the practicing Dharma is all about meditating.
딩은 내가 최초대 아니 동부 조강기 옆에 토노를 제가지 말로는 야제 진는 도마 코니 코드 손지 마도 근데 야제 진는 도에 말 첫 멜론데 당차해봐 간실라 멜론노기 존에기 세차지 말해와 있어나 야제 왜제야 말에 그 신의 지고 야제 진는 도에 말 하통 매발 하통 용발라 제가 맞아발 하통 연사 코로야 말.
So therefore, then it occurs the both meditation of analytical meditation and then single pointed meditation. Both of them are very important. But when it comes to the analyzing or understanding the other situation, the analytical meditation far more important, because without going through the critical analysis, you will not be able to understand the situation of others. One analysis of the cause that impels the harmdoers, anger is unjustified. So it says, now the experience of suffering produced by those who harm does not occur causelessly or from discordant causes. So it occurs from concordant causes. That is to say, from non-virtuous action non-virtuous action that you have done in the past. Therefore, harmdoers are helplessly impelled to do harm by the power of your karma. So normally, the problem with us is because whenever we come across with some difficulties or the difficult situations, we never try to, probe further. We always focus our mind on the problematic situation itself, or whatever the direct problem that we may have. We are completely focusing on that, but we're not actually, going through, analysis further. We neglect, or we are actually lacking the further analysis. So, for instance, when someone, calls somebody's nickname, and the person dislike being called by his nickname, his or her nickname, then he or he uses something, any kind of object or sticks and so forth, to really to harm the person, whoever used the nickname. But then to whom we should get angry? Should we get angry towards the stick or the person who actually uses the stick? Or should we get angry towards oneself who actually uses the nickname to call that person by his nickname? Let's take a 10 minutes break here.
Yeah. yeah. Good.
Go to Rinpoche, go to.
Yeah. Yeah, Thomas meeting and road, the meeting and rose, I think it. Thomas, you gingers and the dangerous in the was a chess on the shin and the million the dangerous and the chandor, dancing the one, then the dead or then in day.
So now here, everything that exists, all that existence are coming into being due to the system of what we call the dependent originations or the cause and effect. For instance, the world that we live in are all existed dependently.
Then the devil mother, then the devil, the Tinsachilla, then the devil do mado, Matinsachilla, then the death of Medua.
So here now, when speaking about the dependent existence, whatever that existence that depends on something, it actually depends on the cause or condition that are concordant, not a discordance. We cannot depend on something, causes or conditions that are discordant and which give rise to its existence. So its existence, very existence is dependent upon the concordant causes and conditions.
Tombo Nilon Sendo, and Jimmy Matimbi Chumar said, Tombo de Matemba de Detumar, Nipa de Dancer, Timbachilla, Danama, the Detumar said, Mosun to you.
Nothing can be coming into existence without depending on others, right? But then depending on others, that wherever that may depends, that dependent and depending or that must be concordant, but it should not be discordant.
That Tendri Pajolo and Shinju, Kangi Chena, Kangi de Jicenta Carol ten and you would do. Dewadina digit any Jicen Carol ten you would say you did any Timbi Jicil ten and you want that do such a Shena any Dubate Yankoron the Timbi Jicil tenema, Jongo taking Yapania you did any source of the joy about it. No, but social Jabing about Chichon and Jabing about it, social Jacha Chuchimo, which is social joy about the Nibania to do.
So everything that we may experience, whether it is be it suffering or the happiness, all dependent upon its own causes and conditions. As we talked about earlier, that dependent must be whatever the causes and condition that may be dependent upon. It's all concordant causes and conditions, not the discordant causes and conditions. Everything, the result that we may experience, whether it is suffering or whether it is positive or negative, it's all dependent upon its own causes and conditions.
That's not a Tarimosana Matona, send in a so you send the Nolola, Laka Chamber than Yanka Chamber than the Cheshire Yana, Kumushu Jison in Nolola, Chitanyo Echidoa. Chichamena, Masukanga Shederoa.
So just think about our own experience of this very lifetime. If we have done something that is bad, later or sooner, we will face the consequences. We will be the one who actually experience the result.
Tindriki Sona Mobaton, the Neji, the social Neji Hawaiian, Jaja Parabola, Napo Yipateda, when I must put to some Maro sang in the G, Nibania Jero.
So in which, by understanding this, then whoever try to harm us or who actually harm us, then there everything we cannot blame on others. We cannot say it is a perfect and 100% fault at others. Well, we cannot deny the any faults of one's own self. The one's own fault cannot be denied.
那连这里一切有那这个去的个卡图修差不修卡是卡差不修送到，但我就没给予来因呢，让给来就了解的了，干嘛当呢？了解的后面把所说那把些接着送到。
So if one has actually accumulated a cause, which is a negative cause, and whatever the the unwanted experience that one may experience, such as suffering and so forth, are all coming into being due to one's own karma or the cause that one may have accumulated in the past.
但这些这的，我说他些搞懂的是呢，点这当连这了一切念就过了一切，那点嘛都多少么都是一切就念用说呢，那这个刚做不的连这同的这个做推荐，那得都刚用说呢，那给的刚呢这个做推荐，那说了点这来过了，第一个了。那说了一切，让那个嘛都，但到这些呢，这我说，就经常到了，就哪年可就讲当下说的就我们是有这么多。
So here, with this, for us, what is required is to have a proper understanding of proper understanding and the genuine understanding and genuine appreciation to cause towards appreciation to cause and effect and dependent originations. In other words, interdependence. So if one has a genuine understanding of dependent originations and has a genuine appreciation to the cause and effect, then one's suffering and happiness and suffering one will able to understand that one's experiences of suffering and happiness is the result of positive and negative deeds.
这里说个三八了呢，去动土节的话，但的我没玩意呢，去恰当的可能让人们之间呢，恰当用的来啥个可能人们之间呢，让人那的人那的看着之间呢，恰当的情况当中呢，中国的是老外呢，啊。So it
is therefore, whatever that may happen, or the unwanted experiences, experiences that are not desirable experiences, in other words. If one is able to really to think about that all those undesirable experiences are coming into being due to one's own, attachment and aversion, attachment, and hatreds. So if one is able to have such understanding and such appreciations, then one will not be easily easily get angry or agitated just by a small instinct.
但多点呢，三八六了不呢？就是那把汤就上到多呢，你先就介绍啊。
So in brief, we should always take our time to analyze by application of reasonings, through reasonings, in other words.
这给我引导去。第一些人让给两把了，先了出，让给两把了，先了出，没得说样的，让了连的呢，出完那把汤钱都搞不下的，别拿送的，甚至你有什么能让给两年就接把接年是，让了那把些把现的，大概我去甚至阿里这样，我给催了一下，对，对我一定给么萝卜，就刚一点过没掉的，给么都略就落下去的。
That's what it says. Anyway, it says, let's read through the text. Consequently, blame yourself, thinking, this is my fault, and I'm wrong to get angry at others. And stop your anger on all occasions. For example, it is similar to the way that beings produce the gardens of the hell with their own bad karma, and these gardens then inflict harm on them.
Tero tendrige sosoge meshenda chige sosole neba shebate she gobagi jense de rani le jacha se thomba yana parubo chigo resena nga de ngone chana da thomba jin marwa.
So then here it really tells us that, whenever that things that happen to us, it is not really a right to blame everything on others by denying the one's own fault and claiming oneself as a faultless person. So this is not correct. So everything that may have happened, it should be we should not really put a blame everything on others. In other words, this is what it's meant.
nga baby tambe chere possible shije sing so ge passe shang bedele jinsen da ko nyeba de se ge ge jinsen yang da shu ye sen shu hie jin je de ge be jue de de na ge de ngone je de na ge de jiro nga so me ye da je ne ba she so na so le no ju yo ba de za ni de kelen che ma ro.
So here now, just like we never really accept our own fault most of the time when something happened to us, or when someone actually bring harm upon us and inflict harm upon us. We always, turn outward and then try to blame others. And we try to explain ourselves that why you are getting angry towards us. It is just because we are, just like we have in Tibetan, in Tibetan saying that it says, if you let someone explain, even and explain and tell the reason, then even the son who actually killed his father will also have an explanation and the reasonings.
nga so dero ni so ma se de nga so ni ge len ke seng de ji chanye na tonye na so se nyawa de le gi chimbe nyawa de la ni du bo tong ye ni ta len ke de ja ta mo mo de do a de ge ja ta mo bo de so so le ji on ge ju bi ge len ke ji ma do ran le ji ta de bi sen che ji ge yen ju jen do na kron le de shu sa gro de ma re so do rangi lele chebe lenke rangi le neba sheba de jibare zondo kanje yenye chizu sheba chunje la rangi leje name chi debere mebare zondo.
So here what it says now, just as due to one's own bad karma, one's own negative karma, the individual fall into a second rebirth in a hell realms, such as in the realm of hot hell realms or the cold hell realms, and surrounded by all those the gardens, in other words, the hell gardens, the god who actually who actually bring a tremendous harm upon us as a hell beings. So all those gardens who actually inflict harm upon us is not actually created by anyone else, but one's own karma. It is one's own karma. It is one's own bad karma that one have taken rebirth in the hell realms and surrounded by all those gardens and going through a tremendous amount of suffering under those gardens due to one's own karma.
Ne nga so ge de ne tisung ge so le ne nga che sa nga so inji mi ji ko jende ge tanye sho ji la nga so lende se ne xie xia ro lende se xie de inji mi ji chulu gi da ji ne chi do de ko do do de ma ro a inji mi lende se so ne jende rang ko ko ro.
So here when we're speaking about cause and effect, the law of cause and effect, in other words, lende in Tibetan, which is law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect is nothing to do with the religious, with the religion or the dharma. It is a fact. It is a matter of fact. It is a reality.
다 렌제 계속 시에서나 고아 가르치기 돈은 고아래 그러잖아. 아니 센센 중에 나자지 게 받을 시고 렌제기 타니데 고아래 봐. 대마도 전제랑래.
So in order to have a proper understanding of law of cause and effect, I would recommend that you should go through the studies of the mind and mental factors. So without having a proper understanding of mind and mental factor, it is not possible for one to have a genuine appreciation to law of cause and effect.
되지. never sheba yin de kasa never sheba zen de echi da gen hun chi sen jen la den da wa yi never she de ye sen jen che sheba da la never den jong ri she dang shi ba dong he men de jin dong he je la ken ba na rang ge ni pe nuen je na jen la ko de chi shi ye pe na ni yi so ma dang je chi lo mi na se ta rang ge le jin de che na 간시 라네 초아샤 다게 레주 규셰네 달르 뉘지 나온종테 디 신진 년동나 다게 대다 마라 간시에서 샤고이 셰네 장 녜만에 세자나 된도나 추진 바 샤장 메바 송수 마 댄수 댄송로 송 양다 된다스
So here now it says, engaging in the Bodhisattva's deed states, I at a former time inflicted harm such as this on living beings. Therefore, it is fitting that I who hurt others should receive this harm. And also, the childish who do not want sufferings, yet crave the causes of suffering. So why should I be angry with others when it is my own fault that I'm hurt? For example, just like the guardians of the hill and the sword-leaf forest, I produce this harm with my own actions. So at whom should I get angry? Those who do me harm arise impelled by my own karma. If thereby you go to a hell, have I not ruined them? Also, Shababa said, when you say I'm not at fault, it indicates that you in fact have not internalized even a bit of the teachings of Dhamma.
되지. 되레다. 내가 되레. 내가 세고라. 다 가정 가족이 컨트롤 파쇼보게 소소로 컨트롤 쟁에 질해서 와이나 내가 내제 된요데. 아니 란테네 렌저게 토노로를 네바데네 파쇼볼 로모노지치 파쇼보데네 녀모도 컨트롤 쟁와도 손에 아니 라메바 소소로 제바인바 이 산나도네 아니 내제 되니라 가사 내제 산네레 조바테 데레도아.
So this is how we practice patience. When one is in a situation where you are about to get angry or where you're about to get agitated due to sudden circumstances or due to someone, there are two things that one should very carefully apply when it comes to such situations. The one thing that one should think about that cause and effect, have a genuine appreciation to cause and effect, and to prevent anger towards others. And then another method is to think about how the other person is remaining uncontrollably under the influences of negative thoughts and karma. So with these two analysis and with true understanding will really prevent you from generating anger and enables you to engage in the practice of patience.
되지. 데 단정해서 이거 컨트롤 해볼거라. 아니 전터도는 도바셔서 대장지 많이 봐. 준되네. 아니 컨트롤 님에다 저피 편산의 돈에 냥네 샴바 슈체 당동에 될라 니기 전체 산의 돈에 아니 강전에 샴바 거는 피해 제거로 와.
So this is how we should always have practice our patience. You know, when the anger arises within our continuum, one must identify that anger, not just ignoring that anger, but try to analyze and eradicate this anger by replacing at the place of anger the cultivation of love and compassion.
다 든지게 컨트롤 강에 트비컬 대단하다 자원이면 바로 찍고래서는 나와이나 근데 메텔 추이 샤츠의 추이 파는거데 제미비 다래서 송아진도아 대야 유무비네지 제바체네 지 모데 찍고 개체만인다 로아 일 제바체서나 지젠의 텐데초는 용고고야나 제데 젠데 간데레서는 신주제네 아니 유무비네지 돈의 고안내지 양 밑에 거 상바다 저와슈 전부 연나 양 바로 보들 희지제네 아니 가대자 던져 용구도 단다디 가동에 타마 손도.
So this is how the Kadamba master has stated that when you say I'm not at fault, it indicates that you have that you in fact have not internalized even a bit of the teachings. That is very sure, because when we were in the situation where when someone makes you angry or so forth, angry and so on, as I mentioned earlier, that one should think about the law of cause and effect, and think about the other person who is remaining under the influences of powerful negative thoughts and emotions. If you're able to think in this way, then it will actually prevent you from getting angry and so on.
라버도 단다 가수게 뒤로 됐으나리 또 정으로지 도지까지 세나리 같이 단다기 내가 될라 라니기 나제 베제던 일을 제바체 진짜 통소나 레스를 진짜 마토나 타지비토네 이치 제마거나 맞잖아 저기래.
So he's always, we're not just talking about such practice, we're not talking about mere faith. In other words, by following a blind faith, that is good for our practice. This is not the kind of practice that we're talking about here. Our practices, all these practices are based on, sound reasoning. As His Holiness always says, one's practice must be based on reasonings. The reasoning must be there always. If there's no reason, although that someone may suggest us to engage in such practice, if you find no reason behind such practice, it is okay to ignore it.
나버도 정으로지 변비기 치대 양스 정도 세제의 양스 가디는 소 장장 바래. 대 정비토는 이니 주인도 소소히 시카다 따와 그건데 소소 파지 비지는 소소히 샘벌을 줘나 펜토체와는 다가라자 나저 베제 또네 이니 센데지 로다데 녀바다 이니 단다 나네저 용의 도시 소인데 라자 쇼지로와 장 쇼지 라자로.
So therefore, His Holiness always use, very often, whenever he gives the teachings, he uses the quote, the quotation, which is from the sutra spoken by the Buddha himself. Just as the goldsmith analyzes the gold by refining the gold, polishing the gold and cutting and rubbing and so forth, burning, rubbing and so forth. Similarly, the practitioner of the Buddha, the teaching, the Dharma, practitioner of the Dharma must go through the critical analysis, as the goldsmith actually going to go through the critical analysis of when it comes to the analysis of the authenticity of the gold. So everything, always, they have given us actually this. Our great teachers of the past has given us a liberty to choose ourselves and analyze ourselves. So therefore, it's always remain that reminds us that one should always practice one's dharma or study the dharma in accordance to the tradition of Nalanda.
Lapa de Matsuki de Lam Rim Chenmo Sumbo, and da Jerumbochina, Casicho Nyancha de John Sonche de Sierra, and it Dojo Dinema Sona Yige. Jen Nonchu Pecha on the Semi Lanka and Roguri Mato, Jenta Drog Mare Song Ye, Jibutamba Chiro. Lapa de Maso, Zani Jindu Choni City, but then Zambin de Nolola, that Semi Gipa Pudushawan, Nang Pan, but they gone Mangipere. Dindriki Tabin Zani Jindu Chuni Shetabi, Jungla Shorewa Raban, Sima Majakina Shid Jan Setungi, Dindriki Chubatambachi Noate.
So therefore, those teachings that have been given by the great teachers such as Lama Tsongkhapa, and if you really look at the teachings very carefully, the teachings that we are on the process of discussing, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is everything that if you really go through that, you will always see there's always a reason behind. There's no such thing that is actually mentioned without any reasons, right? And similarly, that if you have listened to the teachings that given by His Holiness a couple of days ago, that is how the that actually talks about how the Lama Tsongkhapa went through the rigorous studies, contemplation, and meditations, and gained the spiritual realizations. In Tibetan, it was known as Tokje Dunlegma. So that is the teaching given by His Holiness. And so it is everything, if you look at the such teachings, it always says that it is very important that our studies of the Dhamma must be based on the teachings given by the great teachers, great masters, great Indian masters, such as the Sixth Ornament and the Two Supreme.
Ji ni jibo ku de de so de ji re ma do ji de pa ji ko chen de na ni jibo ji ne ku de de no ko de se zo ro ji ma do ke so ke ra ye ma ro ta din ji ge ta du yi xie ye xie de ye bi to no lo la ni no je be je dong so na ni ya ren do ne ni ta ji se no ge shang bi ge guo cha zhe bi ge guo cha din ji cha de so na lo ni ngong guo jie tun ye me ji cha ye je ro.
So it is without going through a critical analysis of one's teachings, whatever the study that one may have doing, and without going through a critical intellectual exercise, just mere following the faith alone is not going to be a really productive when it comes to the practice of Dharma. So in order to make one's practice productive, one should go through a critical analysis, first listening to the teachings. Having listened to the teachings very carefully, one must, employ one's intellect to analyze very carefully. And if one is able to do that, then based on such analysis, one can then engage in the actual practice, such as meditating on the love, compassion, and so on.
Tamasu yule tanen disa, ta yijen la tanen chua meripa ne sede. Yijen dijin yalo bai, masu yuda yijen sede, yijen tala kansa dang, kansa di yiji shiba nilo koya jede, shiba bodo wajile, yijen sede lo yinde.
So now here, on the analysis of the subject, anger is unjustified. So we're talking about the subject. So there are normally, as we are all familiar with, that's a subject and an object. So now at this point, the subject normally refers to the consciousness, mind, or the person. That is what is the subject.
Mazu tseni bata se na yu na yi bi cha ji zhu lo yu cha na yi de yu jen ni se se yu jen se lao yu de yang na xie ba yang na kansa lo ko ge de de zhe dang yu ma yin ge jie yu ma de lo yu lo.
So then, of course, everything that can be object, in other words. But then, in the there's an exception. There's when it comes to the distinction between the object and subject, And there is a differences. Subject, as we talked earlier, subject normally at animated existence, animate existence. In other words, animate existence are said to be subject, and inanimate objects, inanimate existence are said to be the object, such as pillar, vase, and so on and so forth are said to be the object, and the person and the consciousness are said to be the subject. It can refer to both person, and the subject can be referred to both person and as well as the consciousness of the mind. But most of the time when we go through the studies of the Dharma, when it talks of the subject mostly refers to the mind instead of person. An analysis of the subject, anger is unjustified. If you get angry at a harmdoer through an inability to bear suffering, it is contradictory, because even as you are failing to bear a slight suffering, failing to bear a slight suffering in the present, you are aggressively creating the cause of measureless suffering in the miserable realms. So here now, what it says is why you are actually getting angry towards the harmdoer is because the simple answer to that is, a simple and honest answer to that is, I'm unable to bear the suffering that's given by that person. Because in other words, I'm being impatient. I'm unable to be patient to accept this harm that has been inflicted upon me by that person. So now here the fact is, you're actually trying to retaliate the person because you are unable to bear the suffering, the slight suffering that has been inflicted upon us by the other person. If this is the case, then why you are actually furthering your sufferings? By retaliating, right? By retaliating this, with these retaliations, it will not reduce your sufferings. It will further enhance and develop your sufferings. So you are creating yourself a further suffering by retaliating, because you're unable to bear even a slightest suffering that is given by that is inflicted by others to you. If this is the case, indulging in such retaliations will create more causes for suffering, even to take a rebirth in a lower realms. So it is completely contradictory that you are not actually accepting suffering. You're not aspiring to, aspiring for suffering. Yet at the same time, you are indulging in actions that bring about suffering. For that, by saying that someone inflict harm upon me, I'm going to retaliate. By retaliations will actually further your sufferings. Isn't that contradictory?
대나사 다니 신도 lembo 원년의 rangi ranla 체대대에서 초아 마쇼는 배바 샤데 다디 동행 대장랑 다기 접미네나 대나 예유 동행 줄 초아 제된 도면시 제소 송도
So here then said, therefore, induce a sense of embarrassment, thinking, I am very stupid, and work to contain your anger, engaging in the bodhisattva's deed states. If I cannot endure even the slightest suffering of the present, then why do I not stop my anger, the cause of suffering in hell?
다 맞속에 선하지 돈으로 소소 단단 가족이连接的 다른 것들 추이 개체스 게임 상나만 동안제 다 현다지기 소소는 너바시에서나 될라 파连接는 가기도에 아니 될라 게임제와제는 남에다 돈에 존나 파세와제나 간데 용사리 냥뉴지 싸와이나 단다 내거를 그게 좋아서 게 만들어는 소소 나온을 해네 다 디상이 될라 소소 계속 자체자체예요.
So let's think about this here now. When someone, inflict harm upon us, when someone tries to harm us, or when someone is actually harming us. So now here, is this better to retaliate that person? If indulge in actions of retaliation. So, or you should just, ignore whatever the person has done to us. In best, or if possible, in fact, one should cultivate love and compassion towards this person. At the moment, you may not have any, differences. You may not experience any differences. But if you think tomorrow, what you have done yesterday, you will have an experience of peace.
대야 지체 통비 통내려다 뇌지 지체 뇌벌에 뇌내지벌에 뇌벌 뇌내 마시는 계속 채워도선 지체다 이니 편박혼도 통비 통내 저거 강토아이나 니 산이 조대 산이 베드시데래 대매버제 다 유쇼 가르쳐 그래서 리지게 저거 산이 세려 만다.
So this practice should be based on again reasonings. It is better to retaliate the person. It is more beneficial for one. It is more beneficial to retaliate someone, or it is just by ignoring that the person who actually, inflict harm upon us. So this is how we should analyze. Which one is more beneficial? By retaliating or ignoring the retaliations.
근저기 진짜 통비 통내 저거 jan토아이나 산이 연조 크기 특별지라서나 진양 말에 주문냐 봐 세대 차 주문냐 비서 받았잖아. 깨깨 남의 돈도 그래. 깨깨 너무 말에 소선.
If one is able to maintain such practice, even the same person, if you come across with some same person who actually inflicted harm upon us yesterday, you will not be affected by his or her actions. Even he or she is trying to say something bad or do something bad to you, you will not get angry. This is how we actually subdue our mind or train our mind.
This is the church 타니지고 많이 봐 소소 냥뉴사네. 이 때스 천만 레도 그래. 메시지를 냥뉴 던데 때서 같이 중요한로 맞어.
The kind of experience not really to do with the practice of Dharma, but it is a fact. If you really think very carefully how we really handle ourselves with our anger and hatred. So those are the common experiences, nothing to do with the practice of Dhamma.
다 컨트롤 다다 컨트롤 찍고 말에 거기 님목이 쇼 간데 지인소나 아니 대리 님목이 님이 통배동나 내주 된도와이나 아니 산이 내야서데 되게 젠데 투베데 체용비 거라 동네 미시 체크해서 개요 말에 그 라지 semba 투투 말에.
So whenever one come across with such situations, one should always reminded by the faults of generating anger, faults of hostility. By finding a faults of hostility and understanding the faults of anger, will then prevent oneself from generating this anger and so forth. It's a very, very beneficial practice.
코랑게 최 냠발랑 메타와 랑기 디바장비 시드 쇼바 자이 내젤라 젠도 따거데 제로레 송.
And here the text, it mentioned that the suffering generated by harm is the effects of previous bad karma. By experiencing it, you exhaust this karma. If you bear the sufferings, you do not accumulate new sins, and you greatly increase your merits. Therefore, you must not consider how harmdoers ruin their virtue, but view them as a kind in that it is as though they are engaged in actions for the sake of clearing away your sins.
다 되서 데려와 나서이나 녀모세데 세 마셔와 생게 데려와 세 마셔와 생게 데려 카테 자손 세 라시제 단다디기 표현되어 봐마세 세 라시지 쇼알 되고 세 라시지 쇼와 되서나 아니 가르이나 지금 나서는 미기 따소나에 샹바다 뢰보 지 라파차소나 하나 뢰보 생기 좀 좋다 주기 표현 생기데 sembatel 샹베기 샤트도 지 센소와 인소나 나바탄치데 이동와 차거.
So, the negative thoughts and emotions such as anger and hatred and so forth are said to be the delusion or the afflictive emotions, which actually affects our mind, which actually affects dilutes the individual. In other words, it actually the cause of unpacifying. It makes our mind a state of unpacifying state. So therefore, by such understanding, one should try to find a skillful means or the methods to apply antidotes towards such negative thoughts and emotions. By applying such antidotes, one will be able to achieve this calmness or the serenity of one's mind. So with this, then with this kind of practice, whoever sees us, whomever we associate with, will actually, will influence or having influences of experiencing, peace and harmony.
정으로 지금 정다 하던 하면은 이제 가와제스 하던 하면은 가와제바만 하던 하면은 샤샤 위에서 제가 송으로 와 든지기 비다 뭐 비다지 소소소 두고 다 간지 저의 자신이요.
We all have this potential, wonderful potential, the immaculate potential that we have in us. Just as His Holiness always quotes from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by saying, once you are able to control one's mind and subdue one's mind, you will become a worthy of the object of the prostrations, of the object of the praise of the devas or gods and goddesses, in other words.
다 콘트상에 코로나 랭에다 사버려다 이제 거기 랭에 싸워라 메타와 근데 장라 저버치지에 대한 그 가든에 대한 중앙에선 고양이는 전부 다 그래 소문데.
So then also it says like when someone makes you angry, it is due to someone's actions, negative actions towards you. You are able to perfect your practice of patience. In which case, you should also think about the kindness of that individual.
그래서 배년과 전부 시고처럼 나서게 라네 또 그게 전부래. 이게 단지로 나게 가서 지대게 통실을 못 강에 줘버지 통비가라 선발을 정상적으로 아까 상에 지게 제일 해야 되게 크게 내단에 가서 시내 선발대 손나대 레고로 다 공주님이다 그 공주 영화도 좋아다 거기 된 저기 배저 동바되게 총 제세대 세버 통소나 코로 이다 코로기 영원이게 바로래 여와대 셔도나 못될 저래 그럴수도
So here now it's very important, right? It's just think of in our day-to-day life. We all have such experiences when we come across with an individual who is going through a tremendous amount of sufferings, deprived of resources and so on and so forth. As soon as we see that person and you understand that person, and you sympathize with this person, right? You feel pity towards that person, and in the same manner, if someone who is angry towards you, if one is able to understand that such an individual is getting angry because individual is not remaining individual is actually dominated by this anger, and he or she has no control over it. If you're able to analyze and understand such the other person's situations, and instead of getting angry towards that person, you will sympathize with the persons and cultivate love and compassion for this person.
야, 다들 말로는 사자의 이야기다. 제로래 강시라게 최년 무슨바 최년 무슨바 다게 디장시나 준다라 대원 다게 저거 메제나 델레 젬바 지메 젠다시 제당 주발레장 메제바이 미길레 젠제버강 세바시바 저번데바 데니고 젤라너바 타네 초와 동해신 사변에도 제다本来去把些接受电脑，你全部所以都是大水写把大人，热把写把拉热把大，东西全部都比写的东西全部了热把写的人说的，哎呀，这把都老人的家里。
So now says the guardians of the birth story says, I do not think about this person ruining his virtue, but that he is as if engaged in actions to clear away my sins. If I am not patient even with this person, how could I be any more unkind? And Chandrakriti's commentary on the middle way says, you want to say that you are exhausting that effects of the non-virtue karma done in the past. How then can you sow the seeds of further sufferings by getting angry and harming others? Therefore, just as you tolerate bleeding or burning as a treatment to cure a severe illness, it is appropriate to bear small sufferings for the sake of preventing great sufferings.
야, 다 대장이 당가서 단다 추선이게 대천변 대손도 사배 교환나 쇼지도 좀 탈라 때네. 아니 제스지 아니 쇼발라 치제도 로네 림보마 도바. 아니 상주 전벽 공부 영원년도 더 네바. 아니 뒤에 쇼가 라마나지 신조로도 소세네. 아니 뭐하다 말하니까 제다.
To this now let's dedicate our merits. So whatever the discussion that we may have today in the course of 2 hours, by virtue of such and the virtue of the virtue that we have accumulated in 3 times. May all those virtues of oneself and that is accumulated by other beings, become a cause for gaining complete state of enlightenment. May all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions please bless me to be able to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, Nima.
Touche. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.